So, hi Julia.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I mean, it's just so maybe to begin with, maybe you could just begin by just telling us clearly what your name is and how you're connected to water insecurity.
Okay, my name is Julia Sosin, and I'm connected to water insecurity, just as a citizen who drinks water and is concerned, but also I'm a volunteer with an organization called We the People of Detroit, and they deliver water. And they do a lot of things, but yeah.
So, to begin with, I want to ask you a little bit about that term water security or insecurity as it might be. A lot of people tend to think about different things when they use the word or they use the term. Um, when it comes to water security, what is something that strikes you right away as being relevant? What does water security mean to you?
Water security means to me that having access that is reliable to clean water and also like affordable water.
So when you said reliable, what does reliable mean?
That, ideally that you turn on the tap and the water comes out and you drink it and your thirst has been quenched. Yeah.
So when we're talking about water insecurity today, it's an issue that, of course, we're looking at in the context of Detroit right now. What are some burning issues relevant or related to water insecurity in Detroit?
I see issues as being environmental, and then I see political issues. The political ones are the shutoffs of water. And there's a crisis in Detroit where too many homes have had their water shut off for not being able to pay the bills. And then I also see, environmental issues like lead in the water from the leaded pipes being corroded, like in Flint, due to poor. That was also a political issue, but yes. And then kind of these emerging issues with the PFAS in the water in other parts of the state, and other kind of emergent contaminants like microplastics. And so, yeah.
So you live in Hamtramck, am I right? In Hamtramck, do you see any effects of water insecurity at all in either in your city or in your community?
Yes, I know that there are people in Hamtramck have had their water shut off, and certainly I've delivered water to people right outside of Hamtramck in Detroit. There also was a scare earlier, I think it was a couple months ago, where people were, there was some information that certain homes had tested higher in lead. They had their water tested and it was higher in lead. And then that kind of, the city of Hamtramck sent out testing kits, and we put the bottle up to the faucet, and we got our results back, and our water had very little lead in it, but it was still kind of a question mark.
So I'm going to first ask you really to think about this from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. You live in Hamtramck, and then after that we'll sort of just move away, and not necessarily move away, but just move towards your role as a volunteer for We the People.
Okay.
So can you just briefly describe what kind of a community you see Hamtramck as being?
Oh, I love Hamtramck. It's very multicultural. There is a diversity of people in many respects in age. There's tons of children, there's lots of elders, there's lots of young people like young adults like me. There's people who are recent immigrants. There are people who are African American, white, people who have been living here for generations but still identify with the culture they came from, Bengali, Yemeni, Polish, Ukrainian, so lots of really cool things going on there. And there's also a diversity of incomes. There's people who are really living on the brink, and then there's people who are more comfortable. And then there's people who are working, they live paycheck to paycheck, but they still make it happen, so yeah.
Are there concerns about water generally in Hamtramck?
I think it's, and people are becoming concerned about the price of water. I've heard that at block club meetings, and I've seen it on social media. But I think to me, it seems like an emerging concern.
Mm-hmm. So, as far as the water crisis and affordability is concerned, I think a lot of attention tends to focus on Detroit in general, and not so much on the smaller communities like Hamtramck or Highland Park. Although now I think there's a lot more attention with Nicole, for instance, and solidarity and things like that.
Yeah.
How does all of this sort of affect, do you think, the essence of Hamtramck in terms of the, how people are living together, how people are feeling safe in Hamtramck, or even in your community? Is this an issue that you are seeing people talk about or discuss, or are you seeing coverage of that in the local papers, for instance, or things like that?
I think the local paper, Hamtramck Review, covered the lead scare that we had. I'm questioning myself on that, but I think so. And like I said, on social media, when that lead scare happened, on some of the local Facebook groups, there was like an uproar of paranoia, which, rightly so. Lead is a big deal, and we've learned a lot from the Flint crisis. And when I just think of Hamtramck, in terms of, the density, many people will live in a single home, very close to their neighbors. I will also say that of the flooding, so another side of water is not the water that we drink, but the water that comes down, and flooding has long been an issue in Hamtramck when we get a heavy rainstorm. But so that's always talked about, but I'm personally, I've only been in Hamtramck for 3 years. And in those 3 years, I have heard water be discussed more, drinking water.
Can you recall for me, you mentioned a lead contamination scare. Can you recall for us, just step by step, how did that emerge for you? How did you begin to hear the news of that contamination breaking? How did you feel about it? How did you start engaging with that news? Did you talk with other people about it? So I guess I'm just asking you to slowly recall a little bit about how you got acquainted with that lead contamination scare that did emerge. And when was this?
Oh man, I don't remember. I'm trying to think.
It doesn't have to be a precise date per se. It could be something like, it's about 2 years ago we had this scare. And what I'd like you to do is actually just begin with that, something like 2 years ago we had a lead contamination scare or something.
Okay. I believe it was early fall, so about 5 months ago, definitely within the last 6 months, we had a scare that some homes in Hamtramck were randomly tested, and they showed higher lead levels in the water. And so the city, took correct precautions in saying, okay, well, if you want to have your water tested, we're going to, you can come to City Hall and sign up for a free kit. So I found out about this through a post by a concerned citizen on Facebook, because at the time I was part of a local Hamtramck Facebook group, and so I discussed it with my partner, and I was able to go to City Hall, and there were 6 other people. It was like 3 o'clock on a Friday, so they were kind of getting ready to close pretty soon, and there were several other people there very concerned, and so many people were signing up to get a free water kit that they had to at first they said, oh, we'll schedule an appointment with you on site, but so many people were signing up that they said, okay, we're going to mail the kits to people. So we got the kit in the mail, and we had to let the water sit for a certain amount of time, and then we put the bottle right up to the faucet and let the water fill up the bottle and sent it to, I think it was like Water 123. It was some sort of water auditing contractor, and then we got our results back in a week or two. And the lead levels were very low, like not detectable, and I think the city also got a copy of our results.
You know, I guess I'd love you to reflect a little bit on why contamination, especially something like lead contamination, is something that scares you or most people a little bit, because generally, when it's lead contamination, we often associate it with children, for instance, right? But when you hear that, hey, you might have lead or PFAS in your own water line, I guess I'm trying to understand the reactions and the thoughts and all of that stuff that probably is churning in your stomach when you first hear that. Can you reflect a little bit about how you felt when you first got the news, and maybe what your discussions with your partner were like, and ongoing in terms of making sense of the contamination?
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like when my partner and I first got the news about the potential contamination of lead, there was a couple of reactions that we cycled through. The first reaction, and I certainly can speak to feeling this, was I wasn't surprised. I know that many homes in Hamtramck our service lines have lead, and like it's just an old city, and their infrastructure is aging. So I wasn't surprised, because both our home, we have actually a water filter that we invested in. We got it as a wedding gift, actually. So clean drinking water is just important to us. But then there was also just a reminder, the news of the potential contamination was a reminder that we really live in kind of a contaminated place. And I don't think it's specific to Detroit. I mean, the PFAS is a perfect example, or in Ann Arbor, they're threatened by drinking water. It's really a human issue, and particularly like industrial nations like it's an issue of, I'm not going to go further because it could just go on a tangent. But anyway, yeah, so we live in this contaminated place. We live by US Ecology. We live by the incinerator, and our home is kind of like a little refuge from that. Like you come home, we have a kitchen where we can cook and relax and just forget about the stresses of the city. But when you are like, oh, well, even my home has lead paint on the walls somewhere back in there, and even my water might have lead in it. It's just an uncomfortable reminder. I also am aware that even adults can later in life experience, like if the lead is stored in our bones, that could be really bad. We could, adults could lose their teeth. Like there's all sorts of health issues that chronic exposure to lead could have on an adult. So I don't want that.
Did you and your partner talk about what it could be? I mean, what was the waiting process like? Because I imagine that might be a little stressful when you take the water and then you send it in for testing, and then you're waiting. could you describe how that process felt and how you and your partner went through that process?
I would say, again, the process of waiting for the results was like oscillating between paranoia and then just not caring. And each of us felt different things at different points. Was probably the less concerned, but then I would find myself being paranoid too. And sometimes I actually just forgot about the results because I don't even remember when this happened. I mean, I was just so busy at this time that, but I also was reading, at the same time I was reading Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha's book. So it was like, school would make me forget about the results, but then I was also reading a book that was reminding me that lead is no joke in the water, so.
Do you think there are other people in your neighborhood, you talked about the discomfort that comes with suddenly realizing that you're living in a contaminated place. Are there other people in your neighborhood or in your friend circle or community circle who are also coming to grips with this realization? And how do you see this realization sort of happening around you?
Well, the most prominent example of how people in Hamtramck and the surrounding Detroit neighborhoods are concerned about water and contamination, to me, is this group, the Coalition to End the Expansion of U.S. Ecology. And they're concerned not only about the trucks that come in and out of U.S. Ecology with hazardous waste, but also the effects that might have on our water system. And if there was a spill, how close to this dense urban area that spill would be. And so they're very concerned about some of the violations that U.S. Ecology has had. And so the reason I bring that up is that's a coalition of people of different races and different groups, but a lot of the information that's made available publicly by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality has been in English. So that's making it seem like people who don't speak English don't care, but actually they just might not have had access to that information. So I think the Coalition to End the Expansion of U.S. Ecology has pushed for hearings in Bengali and Arabic so that more people's voices can be heard because everybody is concerned about this. And sometimes you see the people who have the most privilege are the ones who are able to make it out publicly, and the people who are the most affected might not always have the time or the energy to do that. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved? Because in so many ways you are a water warrior. How did you get involved? How did you get introduced to this issue? Is this something that you always had in the back of your mind, or how did you? Can you describe your evolution, I guess, as someone involved in this broader movement?
Sure, I'd love to do that. So I've always been concerned about environmental issues, but I've definitely evolved to, throughout my childhood and adulthood, to realize how intertwined racism is with environmental, or racial justice is intertwined with environmental justice. And so when I was a kid, I remember I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and we had to brainstorm ways that we could cut back on water usage. And I remember my mom saying, well, I don't know if this is going to sound great, but my mom was like, we could, we share bath water in our house. When I remember getting a weird reception at school. But anyways, I remember being very concerned about the rainforest and always trying to get my family to be more into the environment as well. But then when I was in high school, I had this really cool teacher Adina Rubenstein, who took us, we learned about, it was called environmental science. We didn't just learn about like the rainforest and water contamination, we also learned about the Great Migration in Detroit and white flight, and she took us to Great Lakes Pioneers Detroit as high schoolers, and we learned about some of the activism going on in Detroit. So that kind of planted a huge seed for me, and realizing that it's more than just the earth. It's the people and the issues that we have to go through. And being more involved with Great Lakes Pioneers, I learned about We the People. The community in Detroit is very small in a way once you start getting involved with activism, but it's getting bigger. There's so many people I don't know, and look forward to meeting hopefully. So getting involved with We the People really kind of brought to my attention how critical like systematic racism is to preventing people from getting water, or it's just at the root of so many of these issues.
Are you a paid staff member for any organization, or are you a volunteer?
I did some like clerical work for Great Lakes Pioneers as a contractor. So I think I just had like a memorandum of understanding, and I put in like, I don't know, maybe 25 hours tops or something. That was to help with the conference. But my employment is primarily at Wayne State University.
And what do you do there?
I'm a graduate teaching assistant. I teach an introductory biology class. It's awesome. And I also do research in pursuit of a master's in biology.
So I want to know a little bit more about how you got involved with the Water Volunteer Program at We the People of Detroit. Again, could you frame that as just reflecting and thinking back, the first time that you heard about them or met someone from them, and why you thought it was important to be a volunteer. So again, really thinking about it more in terms of the story.
Okay. My evolution to volunteering with We the People really began, it was very slow. In fact, I wish I had gotten involved sooner, because I knew about the issue as soon as it emerged in 2014 during the summer when the shutoffs, these massive waves of shutoffs were happening. I learned about the People's Water Board, and that lots of protests were happening. These really awesome activists were putting their bodies on the line to prevent homes from being shut off. And I was aware of all of this, but it was kind of happening in the background. I think I just like graduated from undergrad and was kind of in my own world. But then I also moved. So I moved to Algonac, and I was working there for a while. And then when I moved back to Detroit, the Flint crisis was getting major coverage. And I went to a benefit at this local venue called the Trumbullplex, which is really great, to raise money. It was a benefit to raise money for the people in Flint. And there was a table there with We the People, and I said, I really want to help. Like, what's a concrete thing that I can do? And the person I was speaking with said, you can volunteer and deliver water. So I signed up to do that, and been doing it ever since.
So then what happened? So what was your first day like?
There was a time period in between signing up. I think it was a couple months, because I remember it was in the spring, and then like in the summer is when I actually started volunteering. So my first day, I met this woman, Lindsay, at St. Peter's Church, and that was a main water station, still is, for We the People. And she showed me where the water was stored, and assigned me 2 addresses to go to, and actually I drove along with her. We dropped off the water, we called ahead and said, hi, we're with We the People, we have some water for you. Sometimes well, in this case, so volunteering with Lindsay, she showed me the ropes, and then I started doing it on my own, and very quickly, Ben, my partner, came on board, and it's always nice to have a buddy, partially for safety, but also sometimes it can be kind of intense, and I guess now I've been doing it so long that I don't mind doing it alone. But in the beginning, it was nice to have someone there. And when I say intense, like it's really not intense. Like the actual process of delivering water is very normal. Like, and it's become very normalized to me. Like I go, I pick up water, I put it in my car, I drive to, the northwest side, southwest, east side. I go to my destination. I have a very brief interaction with the people I'm dropping water off, and then I go back to my life. So it's very, very normal. But then when I get home and I'm washing my face, or I'm washing my hands, or flushing the toilet, it hits me. I'm like, I am doing all these things that those people should be able to do, but because of this, ridiculous situation, they can't. So. Yeah, so that's why, and when I first started, it was more emotionally intense because I really realized like how different like my life is from some people's, and how unfair that is.
Is there any incident or drop off or day in particular that stands out for you in terms of your memory?
I remember pulling up to this one home, and the people, I was with Ben, and we pulled up, and it was about 40 degrees and sunny outside, and this man and this woman they greeted us. They were on the porch, and they were really nice, and they actually wanted to unload the water, and so we just were kind of hanging out. And then it occurred to me that the reason they were on their porch was because their heat was out. So, and not only did they not have water, they didn't have heat, and so there's multiple stressors. Another incident was not when I was delivering water, but it was when I was volunteering with my friend who we were canvassing and trying to inform people who are at risk of foreclosure that they had an opportunity to save their home before it was foreclosed on. So we were canvassing and trying to connect them with resources, and we pulled up to a home, and I was like, oh no, I deliver water there. Like, and it just these moments where I'm like, how many things can be tearing at these people's lives? Like, it's just so hard to have a normal life without money.
When you knocked on their door, and did they recognize you? Did they figure out that you were with both groups delivering water as well as the canvassing groups? Or?
No, I had only had one contact with the family before, and I imagine I got the sense that this one family, they've filled out a lot of paperwork in their lives. They've had to catch multiple buses to get, downtown to fill out the paperwork. They have to bring their whole life with them to get into these programs. And I just got the feeling that they're tired and like they're not going to remember me. I don't know. But I've also had, we've also delivered to people. So some people we deliver to once, and then they're able. A short amount of time, they're able to get their water back on. But some people, it's much more complicated, and it's not going to be an easy solution. So some people we've gotten to know pretty well because we'd see them every other week for several months, and strike up a conversation, and yeah.
Can you reflect a little bit on that process? When you think about the people that you're delivering water to, I can one hand, I can see how it would be helpful, and it makes sense to get to know them and have them get to know you as well. But, so can you talk a little bit about that part? Is that something you think is something that you would like to do, or is that something that you are also a little afraid of, perhaps? So, how do you relate emotionally, I guess, is my question. How do you relate emotionally with the people that you are delivering water to?
I empathize. I think I'm using that word correctly. I relate emotionally to the people that I deliver water to, in that I see how, you know, I see how if I grew up in a different neighborhood, or my parents' lives were different and they didn't end up, you know, being able to provide for me like they did, like I would be in the same position. And I see them as, you know, we're fellow humans, like, and it is scary because I also am aware that as one individual, I'm not going to be able to fix somebody, and I'm not trying to save somebody. I'm just trying to, you know, do a little something that will make things in this very small way a little easier. But I also wish that I didn't have to deliver water to them, because I wish they just had water. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's complicated to meet people in these circumstances, because I'm definitely trying to respect their privacy, and I think in a lot of ways they also are trying to respect mine. So, yeah.
Would it be frowned upon to become close to anyone that you're delivering water to?
I don't think so, but it would just, at that point, it's up to the person and what their capacity is. So if somebody has a lot of emotional energy and is connected to a lot of resources, then, like, if they're able to get close to somebody, especially someone who lives in their same city, and help them out, that's great. But not everybody has the capacity to do that. And the organization that I volunteer with, like, they make it very clear, like, you know, you're there to deliver water, like, and you know, don't, like, you be safe, protect them, like, yeah, it's not about, like, being friends, but I don't know. Yeah, it's complicated, because the more and more that, like, I've seen myself go multiple directions. I've seen myself overextend myself, and then I've also seen myself retreat and build walls. So it's a very dynamic, complicated, emotional dance.
But it's something that you feel strongly about, evidently.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel strongly about it, and I'm not sure that I'll always feel like. I see how people who are older than me have gone through cycles of, you know, being kind of bitter, and then, like, being, like, kind of a savior, and, like, all of these states. Like, as humans, we're dynamic, and I can't say what the future holds for my outlook on life, but right now I definitely feel strongly about being part of, like, a beloved community where everybody is trying in some way, in the way that they can, to better the people that they share this community with.
I think there are a lot of misconceptions about about who these people are and why they require assistance and why they're not able to pay their water bills on time. And you know, you might not necessarily be able to provide or the answers to all of them, but based on your experiences, can you just go over what are the different kinds of people that you have met, and what are some of the issues that they are facing?
Okay, sure. some of the people that I've met while delivering water are working people. They're not home when we deliver water, so we put it in a safe location for them. And some of the people we meet, they have children, or their grandparents, and they're caring for their kids' children while their kids are at work. Some of the people we meet are white. Some of the people we meet are African American. Some of the people we meet are old, and some have, 15 people living in one home, and as far as I can tell, because it seems like there's always people moving in and out. And then other people are, senior citizens living alone, and they don't have really anybody. So some issues that they face paying their bills is maybe they're a senior citizen living on a fixed income, and if they have a leak, or something unexpected goes wrong, or the water rate hikes, then all of a sudden that amount that they were planning on paying is no longer feasible. Or some other issues might be more insidious and harder to pinpoint because they're rooted in decades of systematic racism where, African Americans in particular come to mind. They were only allowed by the real estate companies to live in certain areas. And if they moved out of those areas, they would face violence. So, wow, okay, that's huge. But then also the auto industry moving out of Detroit, and the middle class jobs that so many people relied on were suddenly gone, and nothing filled its space, except for perhaps maybe service jobs, which are really low paying and unpredictable and not union. So there's all these factors, and then of course how racism plays in metropolitan Detroit with the suburbs, having a very hostile, traditionally a pretty hostile view of Detroit and Detroiters and their ability, their pride,